We live in a toxic world. Products we use every day like plastic, drinking bottles, skincare creams, air fresheners, tap water and mobile phones are all harming our health.
It's in the air, it's in our lungs. If it's in the water, we're drinking it. If it's in the soil, whatever's sprayed on the soil, it's in the crops, it's on your plate, it's in your body.
So there's no surprise that there's so many health issues like chronic fatigue, IBS, headaches, asthma and fertility problems that are all on the rise at insane levels.
I can't think of a single disease which is not connected with pollution in some way. Serious degenerative diseases are at astronomical levels and they're going up very, very fast. The evidence is there. You can't poison the planet without poisoning the people.
So how do you heal yourself of the toxicity? Dr. Jenny Goodman is a world-leading expert in this exact field. Not only does she explain exactly what toxic products you should be avoiding, she also explains what to replace them with and the exact foods and supplements you should be eating. A truly actionable guide with loads of juicy takeaways to implement today.
It stops being scary when you realise there are safe alternatives, so nobody has to panic, because I've pulled it all together and there are safe, healthy, herbal replacements for virtually everything you might use.
Welcome to the Health Optimization Podcast. I'm Tim Gray, the UK's leading biohacker. This podcast is all about gaining actionable advice from the world's top experts and sharing new breakthroughs in nature, biohacking, technology, and longevity research to help you live longer and happier. With all these man-made chemicals and toxins that are now part of our modern daily lives, it can feel overwhelming knowing what to do to stay healthy. Many people just ignore the problem or claim it's pseudoscience, but there's a reason I speak about this stuff a lot on my Instagram, because this stuff really matters, so much more than you actually think. Dr. Jenny Goodman is an OG biohacker, and she talks about a lot of the stuff I do, but with the medical qualifications to back it all up. Her book, Staying Alive in Toxic Times, is a must-read. Trust me, it guides you through everything you need to know to stop feeling tired, fatigued, ill, and run down all the time. It even looks at the importance of adapting our lifestyle to suit the seasons. She's spoken at the Health Optimization Summit and one of our meetups, and her talks went down really well. So with the new book out, I thought it was the perfect time to bring Jenny onto the podcast. This conversation is full of actionable takeaways. Get a pen and paper and enjoy the ride. Dr. Jenny Goodman, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, Tim.
I know we've hung out a few times and you've spoken at our meetup and you've been to our conference and spoken at the conference. And it was great to see you again at the summit this year. And I'm a bit disappointed that you actually brought a ticket to come along and didn't tell me. It's very naughty of you. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to have a chat with you today.
Yeah, me too.
So in your medical career, what symptoms and conditions were your patients experiencing that first got you interested in this area of the field?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, everything and anything. But what really got me exercised was that in the conventional medical world in which I began, they weren't getting any better. So, I saw everything from broken legs to heart disease to cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, cancer, the full gamut. But what I saw in hospital medicine was nobody addressing the root causes and nobody asking the question why this person became so ill in the first place. And the patients I was seeing in hospital had such serious pathologies that clearly had taken many, many years to develop, as it were, under the radar. And no one was doing preventive medicine. In a way, the kind of thing you're doing now, health optimization. No one was saying, how can we get alongside the body as an ally and ask what it needs and prevent these kind of serious pathologies from occurring in the first place? And of course, after some years of that, knowing it was wrong, but still not knowing how to do it better, I left. And I was very, very lucky to discover the British Society for Ecological Medicine, which is a bunch of doctors who were as disillusioned as I was with conventional medicine, but unlike myself at that time, had found better ways of practicing medicine that's preventive and that looks at nutrition, which is the good stuff that's missing that we need to put in, and at environmental medicine. That means the environmental toxins that are getting into us from industrial pollution and are the bad stuff we need to remove by detoxing. But the third area, which is what I'm working on now and what my second book is about, is not just putting the good stuff in, not just taking the bad stuff out, but how to avoid retoxing, how to know where the toxic exposures that are making us so sick are coming from, so that you don't expose yourself or your children to them. So when I started practicing ecological medicine, I was seeing the same full range of pathologies that I'd seen in hospital, although often at an earlier stage. And of course, the earlier you treat something, the closer you are to actually doing preventive medicine. Working with nutrition and diet and supplements where necessary, finding out what toxins were in someone's system, where they came from, how to get rid of them, and how to use nutrition and lifestyle and education about the sources of pollution to prevent it all building up again, has just been, enlightening and exciting and life-affirming. So, I started doing that kind of medicine back in 2000, so nearly 25 years ago, and I haven't looked back. And what I and all the other doctors in the British Society for Ecological Medicine felt was that we were tired of dishing out what I call the anti-drugs. So if you look at the toolkit of orthodox medicine, it mostly consists of drugs. And by the way, they are mostly made of petrochemicals, whereas until a couple of hundred years ago, all medicines were made from herbs, plants that grow on the earth and therefore have an affinity with our biochemistry. But all the drugs were anti-drugs. So you've got antidepressants, anti-epileptics, antihypertensives, antibiotics, anti-inflammatory. It's all this anti-approach, fighting the body's processes instead of understanding them and working with them. And that's why I changed tack, I changed course, and I've never regretted it for a minute. Because when I found ecological medicine, this was the medicine I'd been looking for all my life. When I first went to medical school as an idealistic young woman of 19 in 1976, you can do the maths. That's what I thought I was going to learn. I thought I was going to learn about the causes of illness and how to keep healthy. And I didn't learn that at medical school, but I have learnt it since. And by the way, the reason that ecological medicine is called ecological medicine, whereas, of course, in America, they call it functional medicine, and we can also call it holistic medicine, regenerative medicine, comprehensive medicine. But the reason I like the term ecological is twofold. First of all, here's a typical scenario. Somebody goes to their GP with, let's say, a skin rash and painful aching joints and shortness of breath. So the GP is going to refer them to a dermatologist, a rheumatologist, and a respiratory physician. And those three people will never sit in a room together. And if you did get them in a room together, there wouldn't be a conversation they'd know how to have, because they're each in their silo. One's dealing with lungs, one's dealing with joints, one's dealing with skin. And of course, the ecological perspective says the human body is one joined up ecosystem. And of course, illness in the skin, the joints, the lungs is just three different manifestations of the underlying process. Something's missing, something's in there that shouldn't be, something's gone awry, and with enough patience, you can unravel it, and all three sets of symptoms will get better. However, ecological medicine is also ecological in a deeper sense, in that it sees the human body as part of the wider ecosystem, which is planet Earth, our mother, the Earth, from which we can never be separate. So, the air, we breathe it. If it's in the air, it's in our lungs. If it's in the water, we're drinking it. And if it's on the soil, in the soil, whatever's sprayed on the soil, it's in the crops, it's on your plate, it's in your body. So if we're going to clean up our bodies, we have to clean up our act on Mother Earth. There is no separation.
It's very interesting because I was having a conversation with someone that was into sustainability and health this week, and he got into space because he wanted a sustainable planet and thought it was the right thing to do. And then he said he found himself in the health space, and we were discussing how the two go together, and he said he doesn't quite pair them together yet. But it's very interesting when I was sitting thinking about this. Actually, if we have a health problem, such as when I got sick back in 2012, if we have a health problem, we think, okay, we need to fix this. We realize that the traditional medical system isn't necessarily getting to the root cause of it, like myself, and then figuring out other ways to get healthier. So the immediate problem is the gun to the head. The motivation is, I need to fix my health or I can't have a good life. Okay. Now, the sustainability aspect or ecology, the future of the planet is, I fixed my immediate health issues, but for future generations, I want them to be healthy. And it's a less of an urgent priority because you've got to put out the fire that's nearest. So it's very interesting how it shifts from, and it's the same as it overlaps with obviously Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like we fix the most urgent things in an order. And the problem is that so many people aren't aware that this future sustainability issue is such a big issue that's causing issues now. And in fact, they're not even focused on the health issues now, let alone the ones of later. So it's very interesting how you just explained that, because I think, health of us, health of the planet, they go so hand in hand. It just one's immediate and one's, kicking the can down the road.
No, I think it's now. I think that the planetary crisis is now. It's not in the future. But also, the planetary crisis is not just about climate change. And people working in the field of sustainability are focused so much on climate change that what they're forgetting is that what's endangering the plants, the trees, the insects, the animals, the wildlife, and us is primarily that we're being poisoned. So what is coming out of the exhaust pipe, and I say this in the air pollution chapter of my book, are about 20, 30, 40 different toxic petrochemical substances, the least problematic of which is carbon dioxide. Right now, I'm not a climate change denier. Carbon dioxide is warming up the planet, and that's a serious problem. But everything else that's coming out of the exhaust pipe is vastly more toxic, and it's toxic directly. So yes, animals are dying because of habitat destruction and climate change, but they're also dying because they're being poisoned by pesticides, by heavy metals, by plastics, by everything that we've been putting into the environment since the Industrial Revolution. Now, actually, although you were saying people's first concern is their health, and they kick the can down the road and worry about the environment later when they're well enough, when they've got time and energy to think about it. And that's true. But in a sense, it is also the other way round. So most people are aware that there's an environmental crisis, right, present and future. They're aware that the planet is in trouble and that this is escalating, but they're not actually aware that there is a health crisis. People are aware of their own health issues, or that their sister-in-law's been diagnosed with breast cancer, or that Freddie down the road has got Alzheimer's, but they're only aware of where it touches them in their individual lives. And the crucial thing I start my introduction of my new book with is to point out that actually we have got an epidemic, a pandemic, one might say, of disease in vast amounts that was unknown, rare or unknown, before the Industrial Revolution. But we can't see that in our own individual lives. It's become normalized. Everyone knows someone with cancer. Everyone knows somebody who's diabetic. Everyone knows someone who's had a heart attack. But if you actually look at the statistics, which I've done, these serious degenerative diseases are at astronomical levels, and they're going up very, very fast. And it's not genetic. People are still being told by their doctors, autism, Alzheimer's, whatever, it's genetic. But by definition, if you stop and think about it for a minute, anything that's genetic is not going to increase in amount and in prevalence. It's only because of environmental factors that we're seeing this huge explosion in things like, Parkinson's, MS, Alzheimer's, diabetes, obesity, cancer, heart disease, and the rest. If it was genetic, it would be the same from one generation to the next. It is impossible for a disease like diabetes to go from very rare 100 years ago to 3 million of the UK population in 2 or 3 generations. I mean, that's primarily sugar, but there are other environmental toxins like the heavy metal nickel, for example, which are contributing there. And when I did the research for my book, I was astonished to discover that there are thousands, tens of thousands of published papers in respectable medical journals showing the links between environmental pollution and our accelerating pandemics of all these chronic, non-communicable, that is non-infectious diseases. And your average GP or hospital doctor doesn't read these journals, and many of them only discovered in the course of writing the new book. The evidence is there. You can't poison the planet without poisoning the people.
Yeah, no, I would agree with all of that, to be honest. And when I say the problem isn't now, it's later, I mean, the perception of the population is, maybe it's not a problem right now. But yeah, I agree. I mean, half of my current day content is focused around household toxins, the toxins around the world, the things that we're interacting with that are causing our health issues that people just don't realize. For instance, one that I talked about, 2 years ago now, before the papers came out about tampons being toxic, for instance. I was talking about how the bleaches and things like that were causing disruption in the microbiome in the vagina, and also the different heavy metals that have been found in them. So I completely in alignment with you on that. And it's crazy how, people actually say that I'm fear-mongering by talking about things that can help them with their health.
Yes, I mean, I've had that accusation as well, actually, because if you raise something as a problem, you're considered alarmist. But what people miss is that in the same breath, you are offering a solution. But nobody will be interested in the solution to a problem if they don't know the problem exists. That you do have to name the problems and the hazards we face in order to be able to do something about them, because there are solutions. For example, Natracare do tampons which are made of organic cotton and do no harm. But you're right. And in chapter 7 of the new book, which is called A Tour of Your House, I take people through every room and every cupboard in their house and what chemicals people are using in the kitchen, on their bodies, in the case of tampons, inside their bodies. And make the point been made before, you really shouldn't put anything on your skin or in any orifice that you wouldn't put in your mouth, because the skin is an absorptive surface. Even the outside skin is an absorptive surface. And yes, the chemicals that are in those menstrual products and in nappies or diapers for Americans are really quite scary, but it stops being scary when you realise there are safe alternatives. So, for example, when the Women's Environmental Network in London have got sources of safe alternative nappies, tampons, sanitary pads and so on, and they've even got tips on how to make your own, if you're that dedicated. But we can use safe, natural, organic products for everything. And one of the purposes of my book was actually to tell people how to do that and where to find the alternatives. So there's a whole resources chapter. So nobody has to panic, because I've pulled it all together, and there are safe, healthy herbal replacements for virtually everything you might use, even things that I never bother with like makeup or nail varnish. There are safe versions of virtually all of them, although nail varnish is a bit of a dodgy one, but if you put it on outdoors in the garden so you're not inhaling the fumes, then you've solved that problem.
Yes, I mean, I spend so much time looking for these alternatives myself. I mean, one of my favorites at the moment actually is a brand called Green Sense. You probably heard of them. Yeah, so got to know those guys just because Christina that owns it is just such a lovely human, and the products are so ethically made with she's a master at making these things. And so I use their washing detergent, I use their sink soap, I use the dishwasher powder now, which before I've always avoided dishwashers because of the alcohol ethoxylates, which obviously damage the gut lining in the dishwasher tablets. So I use those as well. And this isn't a plug for them by any means. It's excellence in terms of non-toxic household products. And I think the most important one, and I've found several of these, but Green Sense is my favorite, is floor cleaner, because obviously you're washing the floor down and you're making the floor covered in these nasty chemicals. And then the kids whose skin is super absorbent, walking around on it and licking the floor and putting their hands on it and then putting them in their mouth. It's like we're poisoning the kids just from using floor cleaner. So, this is why I'm a big fan of these guys. But
2 points there. I mean, one is the way I found Green Sense was because I had long conversations with the Soil Association, whose organic certification is really strict. And they don't just certify food. They have a whole department for certifying non-food products, such as floor cleaners and laundry powders, dishwashing stuff and so on. And it was the Soil Association that put me on to Green Sense. And you know that if the Soil Association have certified it, it really is genuinely organic. Because, and this is important for your listeners to know, the shocking thing I learned from the Soil Association is about labelling. Now, if a food's going to be labelled organic, it pretty well has to be organic. But for perfumes and deodorants and moisturisers and all these so-called personal care products, which I'm increasingly calling personal scare products, they don't actually have to be organic. If they have even 1% organic ingredients, you are legally allowed to label them as organic. So you can be browsing the shelves of the health food shop and it says, oh, organic moisturiser, organic shampoo, and it isn't. That's why the only way to be certain is to go on the website of the Soil Association, or look for the Soil Association's logo, or the logo of a pan-European group that includes the Soil Association called Cosmos. And Cosmos is about certifying cosmetic products. So, you know, it's a bit of a minefield we're living in. You can't be too careful. But I've tried to make it easy for people in the book by listing everything that really is safe and created a whole resources section at the back. And of course, these things will change.
What day-to-day objects and products are the most dangerous for you, would you say?
Okay, well, let's start in the home. Let's start in the home because we spend, unfortunately, 90% of our time indoors. So the air pollution on the street outside, you can't do very much about, apart from campaigning, which is very important. But the air pollution inside your home, you can radically transform. So if you look in the cupboard under your kitchen sink, you will see a whole load of cleaning products which have the skull and crossbones on them. And the skull and crossbones means what it has always meant. It means poisonous. If you look up the data sheet for any of those ingredients, it will tell you, oh, you know, if your child drinks this, they will die. But the issue we're concerned about is not acute poisoning of that kind, which is very rare. And they have tops now to prevent that. What we're talking about is the day-to-day chronic drip of low-level exposure over many years. And that's what you were talking about. You put these toxic floor cleaners on the floor, you're inhaling them, the kids are running about on them, you drop something on the floor and you pick it up and you put it on the worktop, and then there's a piece of cucumber on that patch of worktop and so on. But I think, yes, we need to replace all these with safe, organic, natural cleaning products, which I list in the book and which is really easy to do. But we also need to be a lot less fanatical about hygiene. If my kids would come in from the garden or playing in the woods, I would not make them wash their hands because we need those healthy bacteria. And if you do need to wash something, 90% of the time, water will do, or a totally natural safe soap like one from Suma. Okay, so under the kitchen cupboard, almost all that cleaning stuff can be replaced by vinegar and sodium bicarbonate. And if you mix them together, you get a nice explosive fizz. Then if you go upstairs to the bathroom and look in your bathroom cabinet, the moisturiser, the deodorant, all of these things, as well as perfume itself, contain what's called parfum or fragrance, which is a catch-all phrase the manufacturers use to cover a multitude of sins. There's benzene in there, which is associated with leukemia, and there's all sorts of toxic petrochemicals, none of which are necessary, all of which can be replaced by things like coconut butter or shea butter, and all sorts of natural products you can get in a health food shop if you take your magnifying glass with you and check the ingredients list. And perfume can be, again, what it used to be before the Industrial Revolution, which is simply flower essences. So you can get a little glass bottle of organic essential oil of lavender, jasmine, rose, rosemary, lemongrass, any of those things. Frankincense is one of my favourites. And that is just essential oil from the flower. And you can use that as perfume. And people have said to me, it's very nice, I've tried it, but it doesn't last all day. Very important. No, it doesn't. It doesn't last all day because it's natural, so the body knows how to biodegrade it. It's not persistent. Anything that lasts all day is synthetic and is worrying. And we've got to remember that whatever you put on your skin goes in as surely as if you had swallowed it. So it's absorbed from the skin into the bloodstream. So yeah, alternatives to all those personal care products. I think even more important in your home than all of that is what you're sleeping on. what's your mattress made of? Because conventional synthetic mattresses these days, and they are mostly synthetic, are outgassing the glue and the fire retardants and all the chemicals inside them. And it particularly worries me when people buy a new mattress for their child to sleep on. But again, there are safe alternatives. There's a company called The Natural Mat. There's a company called Abaca. They're in Devon and Wales, respectively. And more companies now are making organic mattresses. So you're neither inhaling anything toxic at night, nor are you absorbing anything toxic from your skin. Now, one of the chemicals I mentioned that's in conventional synthetic mattresses, and that's also in your carpets and your sofas and your curtains, is fire retardants. Fire retardants are needed for synthetic materials because synthetic materials are highly flammable. But if you get those things made of natural materials like wool or flax or hemp or cotton, they don't need the fire retardants added by law because they're naturally fire resistant. And again, I think that is so important. So don't panic if your mattress or your sofa, whatever, is more than 2 years old. It's finished outgassing. But my concern is when you buy a new mattress, try and get organic. When you buy a new sofa, try and get organic. And again, there's lots of tips and clues in the book of places where you can go and companies that make those kinds of things.
Thank you, Jenny. Those are some really good suggestions. I mean, on the perfume one, that's really an interesting point because I used to use Tom Ford, and there was a particular scent that I loved. It's very expensive, but very good, lasted a long time. And then when I found out how toxic fragrance or perfume was and how many different chemicals, and I think it's about around 300 that they can have in each perfume under the label of fragrance and not label what's in it, I dropped it. I literally dropped it. And it smashed. And anyway, so I was a bit gutted because I loved that Tom Ford scent. One day I was in Whole Foods or Planet Organic or one of these, natural stores, more natural stores, and I was trying on a load of different essential oils, and one was called Neroli, and it was exactly the same as Tom Ford. And so I carry around a little glass thingy of Neroli essential oils. And so what if it doesn't last as long? It hasn't got propellants in it and nasty chemicals in it. And, I sometimes just put it on the clothes, and I don't put it on my skin too often because, what goes on goes in, and I don't actually know what neroli does to the body. But it smells fantastic. You wouldn't know the difference. It's crazy. So on the perfume side also, there's a brand that actually exhibits at the Health Optimization Summit called Meadow, Medeau, and they're actually natural scents as well, and it smells fantastic, and it only lasts probably 3 or 4 hours each go, but you can reapply it, or if you're going out on a date or something or other, it's perfect.
Right.
And then in the mattress, it's really interesting because I've done a fair bit of research into the mattress area, so it's really interesting that you bring it up and you got it in the book, because it's an area that people spend 30% of their lives next to, and someone the other week said to me, "Oh yeah, I've got a lovely memory foam mattress. My sleep's improved so much." And I was like, interesting. When I was tested with a organic acids test with the Omnos guys, it showed a petrochemical that I was excreting. This was a few years back, that was found in memory foam. And now I then changed to a Samina bed, which is made in Austria out of natural wood, no glue, no metal, natural wool duvet, and natural latex pillows without the chemical additives in the latex as well. Beautiful beds. They're even grounded with dirty electricity filters. And after having that for a year, I retested my toxins test, and the petrochemical had gone. The only thing I had changed was moving from a normal mattress with memory foam to a completely natural mattress.
That's not the only thing that got rid of it, though. You didn't just stop putting it in by changing mattresses. The way you eat and the good oils and fats that you consume would have helped to proactively detox it. So yes, you need to get rid of the source of the toxin, but you actually also need to be taking in things like the good oils and fats, which will help remove these petrochemicals because they're all fat soluble. So although you didn't change anything, you were already doing the good things that facilitated that.
Yeah, I've also increased my methylation because I'm an undermethylator as well, and drinking better water and all these things. I mean, but the main thing in that year period was really the mattress. So it was really interesting to hear you say about these points are some of the key points that I've taken from, you know, navigating this toxic world. So, like, what would you say are the main symptoms, the symptoms and signs that come from living in a polluted environment, would you say?
Well, they're everything and anything, because we are all biologically different. We're all genetically, biochemically different. So we will each have vulnerabilities. You know, someone's vulnerability might be the lungs, somebody else's the brain, somebody else's another part of the body, the kidneys, say. And so these pollutants affect everybody in a different way. So you really cannot generalize. I can't think of a single disease, apart from possibly broken bones, which is not connected with pollution in some way. So you can't draw a straight line. Usually you can't draw a straight line from pollutant X to disease Y, because we're all exposed to this massive cocktail of many different ones. And, you know, it's your own personal vulnerability that will determine how ill you get and what kind of illness you get ill with. There are some generalizations possible. All heavy metals damage the brain. Okay, we're all exposed to heavy metals, and we're seeing massive increase in all the neurodegenerative diseases and in autoimmunity. Now, what heavy metals do to the immune system is this. They distort the structure of proteins. Could be the protein in the brain, could be the myelin protein. The myelin is the fatty substance, but it has protein as well, that coats the nerve and insulates it so nerve messages can be transmitted. That's what's destroyed in multiple sclerosis. And there's a case history about this in the introduction to my new book. What the conventional medical approach is to multiple sclerosis is to say, oh, look, the immune system is attacking your own myelin sheath and destroying it. So we have to stop the immune system doing that. We'll zap it with steroids or something else powerful that does temporarily stop the immune system destroying the myelin sheath, but it also stops the immune system doing all its other jobs, like protecting you from infection. But what they don't ask is, why would the immune system attack its own body, its own tissue? The immune system is very clever. It's evolved over millions of years to tell the difference between alien protein and self protein. Alien protein is bacteria. Why should it be attacking the myelin sheath? Here's where it connects back to heavy metals. If you've got mercury, aluminium, cadmium, nickel, other toxic metals on board, they get into the protein and they distort the structure of the protein. So guess what? It does look alien to the cells of the immune system, which are they're on patrol. They're looking out for what looks wrong. So if the myelin sheath in your nerve coatings or the proteins in your brain look wrong to the immune system because they've been distorted in their structure by atoms of heavy metal, then the immune system will start to attack them. That is just one of the many mechanisms by which environmental toxicity, industrial toxicity, is causing autoimmunity. And the solution is not to attack the immune system in turn, but to detox the heavy metals and the other junk out of the body so the proteins can recover and the immune system will stop having a go at them. And I mean, that is so successful. Myself and many other doctors in the British Society of Ecological Medicine, we have seen this work time and time again. So where there's a cause, there's a solution.
It's actually really interesting because when I first started getting sick back in 2012, 2013, and I was in and out of the doctors all the time, and my immune system was falling apart, and, you know, it just wasn't coping well with life. And I started getting kidney stones and blah, 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 all this stuff. I went to a nutritionist, actually at Biolab, interestingly, and they did a few tests for me over there. One of which was a heavy metals test, and it showed I was toxic in mercury, like very high levels, very, very high levels. And, you know, my cause and effect chart that I put together linked everything back to mercury pretty much. Like, for instance, the oxalate issue in terms of the stressed liver and then not breaking down oxalates and then creating endogenous oxalates, which then cause the kidney stones. The immune system that couldn't cope because of the high mercury levels, and the brain fog and, you know, whatnot. And so I did the alpha lipoic acid chelation therapy, and I did 98 rounds of chelation therapy on alpha lipoic acid based on the Andy Cutler protocol. And I could track my health and my immune system and my body temperature so that my metabolism was working better, basal body temperature. And I did this for about, must have been 2 years, over 2 years. And I've still got the charts today. And you can see how my immune system and my body temperature came up over a period of time, the more chelation therapy I did. Yeah. And with supporting the liver with castor oil packs and liver flushes, and I know they're controversial, but I found them to be fantastic. You know, all these things, my immune system actually got better and better and better. I'm still working on the post-viral stuff now from it, but it's amazing how you're saying this and it absolutely directly confirms what I've gone through. So it's great.
So it's interesting about mercury. First of all, I would say everything you did is great. And there are loads more substances that help get mercury out of the body. I mean, these days I would throw everything at it, you know, from coriander to chlorella to the whole onion and garlic family, because they've got sulfur in, and selenium and zinc and phosphatidylcholine and vast amounts of vitamin C. So we can get rid of these toxins. But if we're thinking about what's in the earth, we must mention pesticides, because farmers spraying pesticides on the earth are effectively spraying pesticides at your gut microbiome and at your brain. And pesticides are petrochemicals that were first used as nerve gases. So they're still neurotoxic. They damage the brain. They're also carcinogenic. They cause cancer. And they're also endocrine disruptors, which means they mess with your hormones and therefore they mess with fertility as well. And the solution to this is very, very simple. And it's eat organic. And I cannot tell you how fundamentally important this is. And when people say to me, but organic food is more expensive, I say several things in reply. First is, yes, it is, and it damn well shouldn't be. This is a campaigning issue. The government should be subsidising the small human-scale organic farms that are wildlife friendly and bringing back the hedgerows and bringing back the trees and growing lots of different crops together with so much biodiversity that the weeds don't get a look in and the pests don't get a look in, and you don't need your pesticides. Right? And for the research for chapter 1 of my book, I travelled around and visited several regenerative and organic farms, and I've absolutely seen it can be done. This is the way of the future. We do not need pesticides, and we've grown food without pesticides for many thousands of years. More and more farmers are doing it again. And this matters because I do seriously predict that the choices that farmers make will affect your health far more profoundly than anything doctors do. If we stop poisoning the earth, we stop poisoning ourselves. So yes, organic's more expensive, but it isn't really more expensive because we're all paying the cost of monocrop agrochemical farming in terms of NHS waiting lists and soaring health costs, and the water companies' futile attempts to clear the pesticides out of our water supply, for which we pay a fortune in our water bills, even though they don't succeed in removing the pesticides. Right? So the cost of non-organic food is hidden. We pay it as taxpayers. We don't pay it as individual consumers. And the next point I would make about the cost of organic food is, if you've been eating chicken 3 times a week, and it's a battery chicken raised with great cruelty and full of stress hormones because of the life it's lived, and really not very nutritious for you and certainly not very ethical. Well, if you change to eating organic free-range chicken but once a week instead of 3 times a week, that's less money, but it's an investment in your health, because it's more expensive to get cancer because then you can't work and you can't earn.
It's really interesting because I saw a piece about 2 families, one that went organic for the space of a week and one that didn't. And they measured their urine output of these pesticides on the way out. And it showed almost within a week that it was nearly non-existent, even though obviously organic does still have some chemicals. And, you know, there's a whole story behind that as well. But point is, it's very interesting how quickly the body starts clearing, which means it would be in a less stressed state and actually healthier and improving quite quickly.
Within a few days, yeah.
The other thing I want to say is, you just showed Dr. Dom Nischwitz' book. He's my best friend, my very closest dear friend, and so I'm very familiar with his work. And everyone that's listening to this would actually benefit from having a read of how health starts in the mouth, and that's, you know, for instance, even down to the using mouthwash twice a day means that you have 25% higher chance of diabetes because you're nuking your oral microbiome. So even your mouthwash needs to be picked carefully.
Well, it depends what mouthwash. Yeah, I mean, this is this is one from Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, right, with propolis and Sardinian cistus incanus, and it's got only organic natural ingredients in it. But if you're not eating sugar, you shouldn't need too much in the way of mouthwash. About this book, It's All in Your Mouth, everyone should get a copy for their dentist, because most dentists haven't a clue what's in there. And one final point, Tim, about, oh, but organic is so expensive, right? We spend about 8% of our income on food. If you go back to the 1960s, we spent 33% of our income on food. Now, I know it's partly because housing is so expensive now and such a big chunk of most people's expenditure, but I think we need to prioritise our food. I have had people sit in my consulting room and say, look, I'm sorry, I can't afford to eat organic. Oh, and can we reschedule the next consultation because I'm going to the Caribbean for a month? Now, hang on a minute, get your priorities straight.
So you made it clear that no matter how hard we try, we're going to be exposed to some of these damn toxins. So let's do a couple of quick fire rounds. Firstly, what kind of foods and supplements can people eat to minimize their health impacts?
Vast amounts of organically grown vegetables. And some of it you eat raw as salad, and some of it you juice to maximize the phytonutrients, and some of it you cook because then you absorb the minerals better, especially if your gut is compromised, and then some more vegetables. And don't go mad on the fruit because it's too much of a sugar hit. And actually, I think many of us do need some animal food. Fish, make it the small fish, like sardines and mackerel and the tiny ones, because the mercury and the other pollutants in the ocean haven't built up to such an extent as they have in the big fish like tuna. I think free-range, organic meat from animals that lived a happy life is absolutely fine, and the same with eggs. Dairy, it's very individual, but I'd say make it raw, unpasteurized, and make it organic. And of course, the pulses like the chickpeas and so on and lentils are fine for most people, as are nuts and seeds. But I would be careful of soya. It's packaged in aluminium. It's almost all genetically modified. And actually, what the Japanese have known that you have to do with soya for thousands of years is you have to ferment it. So you make miso and you make tempeh and you make tamari, but you don't go too mad on eating the soybean itself. It needs to be fermented. Yeah, and grains, there's huge controversy about grains. I think some organically grown whole grains from time to time is absolutely fine for most people. But if you follow the basic rules, the basic 4 rules that I actually put in my first book, the golden rules are: eat your greens, eat organic, cut out the sugar, and cut out the artificial additives completely. So nothing in a package, nothing with an ingredients list, just food that your great-grandparents would have recognized as food. Once you've done that, then you're in a position to find out what you need and what's your individual difference. One man's meat's another man's poison, okay? But what we need to understand is that nutrition is not just giving you the good stuff. It's also giving you the equipment to detox the bad stuff. So the B vitamins, for example, the B vitamins are used up when we're under stress, and so is vitamin C. So the more stressed we are, and also the more pollution we're exposed to, the more we use them up. But the B vitamins are crucial cofactors, that is helpers, for our detox enzymes. So the enzymes your liver makes to detox all the pollutants you're exposed to, they need the B vitamins, they need the good minerals like zinc and selenium and iodine. Okay, we haven't talked about water pollution, but as well as plastics, which are endocrine disruptors, just like pesticides and are estrogen mimics, the water contains chlorine, which is going to knock the iodine out of your thyroid hormone. So we need plenty of iodine from seaweed, from fish, and from iodine supplements. And if you're living in a part of the UK where there's fluoride in the water, and Boris Johnson's government passed a law proposing to put fluoride in everyone's tap water in the UK, you have to take iodine to combat that, to push it out. And after you've been swimming, if the pool was chlorinated, also take some iodine. That protects your thyroid gland. It also protects you in the event of a, God forbid, nuclear explosion or nuclear leak, because the radioactive iodine that's released in those first few days won't get into your thyroid gland and your body. if you're fully topped up with non-radioactive iodine. So iodine is crucial in so many ways.
Excellent. So, okay, next quickfire round. I have a list of normal, everyday products that many of us use at home, and I'm going to list them, and I want you to tell me why they're bad and what to replace them with. Then let's, just quickfire. Ready? Plastic containers and bottles.
So you carry your water in glass bottles, and in case you're going to say to me, but it might break, here is a padded container that costs £6 from a camping shop. And you put your glass bottle into your padded container, and that is even better than a metal bottle. A metal bottle's okay for water, but it's definitely not okay for fruit juice, which you shouldn't be drinking anyway because of the sugar hit. But if you put anything acid in metal, it leaches out the nickel, which constitutes 14% of stainless steel. So glass, glass, glass.
Why not plastic, Jenny?
Okay, so what plastic is a petrochemical, and like pesticides, it can act as an estrogen mimic. It sits on the estrogen receptors on the surface of our cells and is responsible in large part for our epidemics of reproductive cancers. That's breast cancer, prostate cancer, endometrial cancer, cancer of the lining of the womb. There are many other causes for all these things as well. But plastics, which are estrogen mimics, are contributing. Now, we know that all the plastic we throw away, and even a lot of what we recycle gets thrown away, we know it's choking the oceans, it's choking the wildlife, the birds and the fish and so on. But it's also coming back to bite us because the microplastics are in the water, in the air, in the earth. If you drink water out of a plastic bottle, especially if you've left it in the sun or on a radiator, you are drinking microplastics. And when you throw it away, you're causing other people to end up drinking microplastics. But also, if you wrap your food in cling film, that very soft plastic is going to get into the food. Whereas if you store something in a hard sort of Tupperware plastic box in the fridge or freezer, that's not a problem.
Okay, next one, non-stick cookware.
If you really have to have it non-stick, get green pans. Green pans use diamond and sand rather than toxic aluminium, which is an ordinary non-stick. Alternatively, you can use cast iron, ceramic, glass, and you just have to stir.
Okay. Air fresheners and scented candles.
Don't. Why does the air in your house need freshening? Open the windows, empty the bins, and if you still want a nice smell, get a little burner and burn some natural essential oil in it. So the same as perfume you would use yourself. You don't need scented candles and air fresheners, and they are toxic. But just to go back to the non-sticks, what they contain is PFAs, polyfluoroalkyl substances, which are the subject of the film Dark Waters, and we really don't want them. And if you do everything you can to avoid plastic, you'll mostly avoid the PFAs as well.
Excellent. Okay, household cleaning products.
Yeah, like I said, bicarbonate of soda mixed with a bit of water and or vinegar will do almost every household cleaning job. And there are some natural, safe versions in the book, mostly in chapter 7, which is a tour of your house. And I've listed all the good ones, including green scents, which you've discovered as well.
Second to last one, furniture and carpets.
I'm inclining more and more to floors that are made of solid wood and that are not carpet at all. And you can also get sisal and all sorts of other matting and natural materials. I mean, I did some time ago get a completely natural organic wool carpet for the bedroom, but because it's so natural and organic, it's not dyed. And therefore it's white, and therefore it shows up all the dirt.
And it's expensive.
Very wooden expensive. Floors and organic rugs.
Yeah. It's funny, I went to buy a new rug for my last house, and everywhere I was looking for natural ones. And the price of, there's a poly, one of the polys, anyway, plastic carpet that looks lovely. It feels lovely, but when you're near it, it stinks. It absolutely stinks. So anyway, okay, cool. And then the final one, get ready. Tap water.
Yeah, we need to filter it. We 100% need to buy a water filter, ideally a plumbed in whole house water filter, right? So it's not sitting on the kitchen top. All your water has had all that junk taken out of it, and you're also not showering in chlorine and bathing in it. But the most important question is the one you haven't asked me, which is what about our electronic devices? because in addition to all the chemical toxins, there's physical toxicity, unfortunately, from the mobile phone masts, or cell phone towers, as they call them in the States, from the Wi-Fi router from your mobile phone. And there are ways to make all of this much safer. And I describe them in chapter 6 of the new book, Poisonous Tech. And this is the most inconvenient fact of all. And at the Health Optimization Summit, where everybody knows how to eat and everybody knows how to detox, nobody knows that they are putting themselves at severe risk of cancer by holding their mobile phone directly to their ear.
So guys listening, obviously all of these and more are in Jenny's new book. And Jenny, if you could hold it up to the camera again for us so we could all take a snapshot of that. So Getting Healthy in Toxic Times, which is... And
the subtitle is An Ecological Doctor's Prescription for Healing Your Body and the Planet.
Dr. Jenny Goodman. Jenny, thank you. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
My pleasure too. Thank you, Tim.
A massive thank you to my guest, Dr. Jenny Goodman. Learn more over at drjennygoodman.com. You've been listening to the Health Optimization Podcast, and I'm Tim Gray. Comment and leave the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel to see more. See you next time, and remember, let's spread the health.